Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're back on the street today, looking for someone to talk to. And I've run into one of my old, how old do we want to get, Mel? Old friends, Mel Kleinman. Mel is the president of Humetrics. Their byline is because no one ever regrets hiring the best. In my opinion, Mel is probably the foremost leading authority anywhere on hiring the right people and keeping those people. So today we're going to be talking about the war for that's out there, always out there, that you need to win, and that's hiring the best people you can to work in your business. Mel, welcome to the show.
Rick, thanks you, and it's exciting to be here. I just looking forward to talking to you and hopefully sharing some ideas and messages that can help everybody win this literally war for workers today. It used to be a battle, but it's now become a war because we're literally fighting it on a number of fronts. You know, it's not only a front of today of not a finding, and today it's not even a word of finding, it's attracting. It's a war for attracting talent. And then you've got another battle in once you attract them, is how do you make sure you get the right ones? Because in many cases, I talk about the fact the applicants are better than you are at interviewing because they get more practice. And then thirdly, once you get past that point of hiring them, what are you going to do now to keep them? I mean, we've got this, what they call the Great Resignation. I did a webinar just back in February, and I asked a question about how many people in the last year have either gone looking for a job, had a job coming for them, have taken a new job, are going to go get a new job, have turned down an interview, or have turned down a job, etc. Out of that audience, 96% of them were involved someplace in the interviewing and hiring process. Wow.
That is just crazy. You know, it feels like one of those situations where you're getting into both ends if you're an employer. The pool of labor is shrunk, we're told, every month. And the quality, obviously, is when you shrink that whole pool. In fact, I believe the pool of labor based on percentages in a lot of places, when you get down to, 3%, 3.5%, 4% unemployment, my father used to tell me that you're getting down to where you're down to the bottom. You got people. You might
past Rick. You're past the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, your numbers, your odds, the opportunity. It's difficult. What do you see as far as where we are currently, as far as just the pure pool of available labor?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I did as I was telling you earlier before we came on the air, I did a presentation the other day, and I literally thought about 4 quotes that really kind of summarize it about the need to make sure what I call higher education, hire the right people. And the first quote literally came from Sam Walton. And Sam Walton said, the most important decision a manager makes every single day is who he allows in the door to help him take care of the customer. And when you begin to think about, be that an internal or external customer, but the most important decision you make as a manager is, more importantly, not only who you allow in the door, but the matter is, who do you keep once they've gotten in the door? Because you may make a mistake. The second quote, interesting enough, came from Herb Keller, founder of Southwest Airlines. And I loved his style. And he said, the day we screw up the people, and he used the word screw up, the people think it's all over. So you've got that 2 quotes. And then you got Red Auerbach, when he was coaching the NBA, who made the comment, if you hire the wrong people or you put all the wrong people on the team, no fancy management technique is going to ever bail you out. If you hire the wrong people, why do you keep them? Why do you put up with them? You've made a mistake, cut your losses and get over it. And then, I'm sorry, it's gotten to the point in mine, and I just bluntly said it to the group last week. I said, you know what? Managers, owners get the employees they deserve. They hire them, they motivate them, and they keep them on the bus. So if you've got a problem with people, I got news for you. You're the problem.
It brings to mind a story I read recently, baseball, same thing. I mean, the New York Mets have a player, his name's Conroe, been a good player, won, I think, most valuable player perhaps of the year, but he's in his mid 30s, pushing it towards 40, and his productivity fell off. He's owed $40 million in salary, and they cut him loose, and they're going to pay him $40 million, but he was not the right player to be on the team. The owner, who they claim is the richest owner in baseball, who's trying to build a team, but I had to look at that for a while. $40 million, because this guy just wasn't the right player, and you only, of course, have so many slots on the team. I thought that was an interesting.
I'm gonna take that story and I'm gonna use it, and I'm not even gonna give you credit for it anymore. But but the fact of the matter is, that person is, first of all, I am sure he spent a lot of time trying to make that get his return on the investment. He just didn't cut the person, because that person, he had a lot invested in him.
Right.
But when it got to the point that the return was hurting the team, because you have to remember, A players only don't want to play on B teams. Okay. So they don't want to play on B teams. And the easiest person to leave you is your A players. So when you've got somebody who's not producing and not helping the team, you've got to make those hard decisions. So.
Well, and that's exactly what happened. His batting average, everything had fallen so far off in the last year. But yeah, that man made a hard decision about his team. And in a sense, I guess you own the team, you write the check too. So anyway, good story though. I really think for all of us that make that mistake of hiring inevitably a wrong person, and then being able to step up and recognize, admit it, and move forward. Well, today's environment, we talked a little bit about the labor pool. Now we've still got to fill a slot. We still have turnover. We still want to grow our business. We need people. How do you recommend we best go about finding these right people?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna make a statement to you. When it comes to finding people, let's start with it. We are not in a world that we've been in, and this has been a cyclical thing, but it's even the strongest cycle today. We're not in a world of acquiring talent. We're in the world of attracting talent. Okay. Remember, A players, if you've got an A player, the easiest person to leave you is your A players. Okay. Everybody wants to hire them. Okay. So the point being, but here's the question. Why should that, and we'll just use the word ATA players. I call them star employees. And there's a reason for stars, because the stars are people who are self-motivated. That's, they're talented and trainable. They're accountable and responsible. That's a star. Okay. But the question I ask is, why should a star employee come join your team? Okay. What's the reason? If we're going to attract them, do you have, and literally I ask this in every workshop, webinar, live presentation, I say, how many of you in this room, how many of you listening to this have what I identify as a unique employment proposition? Do you have a written list of the key reasons that star employee should come to work for you or become a member of your team? Whether you're in a profit, nonprofit, whatever it is, do you have a written list of why somebody should come? Because if you don't have a list of why that star should be a part of your team, where's that star player going to get the list? So the number one, and the fact of the matter is, if I go across the board, and I don't care if it's small, medium, large corporations, I don't care if they're hourly or salaried, I don't care. I will tell you, less than 10% of all the companies out there today literally have a true unique employment proposition, have really sat there and said, okay, here's the reason, Rick, you should become a member of our team. And it's got to be things that everybody doesn't have on the list, and you can't put things on the list that aren't real, because you may sell today, they'll be gone tomorrow. So if we do nothing, if I could get anybody out there listening to this and to do one thing, the key is build your unique employment proposition. Just like as a company, as a charity, whatever it is, what is your unique selling proposition? Why should I donate to your charity? Why should I give time to your charity? Why should I support your charity? Why should I buy from you? I can buy from how many, none of us are so unique that say well, there is not a competitor out there. So what's your unique selling proposition? Most of us work at that, but you know what? It's good. Let's go back to that Sam Walton quote. The most important decision you make as a manager is who's leading a team. You've got to make sure you pick the team. Where's that unique employment proposition? Now, we could spend the whole time talking about how to build it because it's not that difficult. And in building it is one of the best things you can ever do, because the number one key to building it, Rick, is to go to your best employees and say, why do you work here? What makes you get out of bed in the morning and show up? You know, when was the last time, and that's a whole other conversation we could have, but that becomes what I identify as the stay conversation. And I don't know if you've ever talked about this on your program, but we need to be having stay conversations. We need to, you know, we send that survey out to customers. You buy from anybody today, don't you get that survey? Would you please answer the survey? You know, and then we look at on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank us? Okay. We're looking for people who rank us 9s and 10s, net promoters. Okay. Why don't you ask your employees on a scale of 1 to 10? How do you like working here? And what makes you like it? And what can we change? What could be better? Don't do exit interviews, do stay conversations. And that will help you build your unique employment proposition. So there's just one idea, and we can spend this whole hour if you want to, and you know, it's your program, so you tell me where to spend the time, but we could spend this whole hour talking about building unique employment propositions. But you need one. You've got to have reasons for people to join you. So,
you know, it's one of the best things, and I think most useful things I've heard in a long time, just in general. Not only in this program, but from a business point of view, similar to when I first, many years ago, heard about the unique selling proposition. But the self-reflection alone on the owner or the manager to think, why are these people really working here? Why do they stay here? That's just fantastic. And I agree. And I'm guessing you know more because you've been at it for so many years, that less than 10% of the companies spend any
it really
time.
is.
Just spend any time. So I hope everybody heard that loud and clear. Well, Mel, we cover the unique proposition of getting people to stay. That nugget alone to me is worth the price of admission. Let's kind of move down the line a little bit in the process. Now we've attracted people, as you said, to the job. What about the interview process itself? What is it that we need to key on to do the best job possible?
Rick, we have 15 minutes left to make everybody into a better interviewer. And the fact, again, back to the fact, if you look at it, how many of you have really been trained in interviewing? And let's just take the number, like as we talked about unique employment propositions, before we start the interviewing process, I love to use an analogy in my presentations. And I ask a question, and I ask a very simple question. How many people in the room do jigsaw puzzles? And I get lots of hands go up. And then I say, okay, so you all do, what is the most important piece or part of a jigsaw puzzle? And somebody will raise their hand, and the standard answer is number 1, the borders. You know, you got to get the borders. Well, I throw a curve at them. I say it's a round puzzle. Now we got another problem. Some people say it's the first piece. You know, you look for the one that can start to build something off of. Some people say it's the last piece. Someone says it's the piece that people can't find. And I said, you're almost right, but literally think about what the most important part of the jigsaw puzzle is. And in the reality, to make it easiest, it's the picture on the box. Have you ever done a jigsaw puzzle without looking at the picture on the box? And I had this person in a session a couple of years ago, I will never forget, because she said, we not only never look at the picture on the box, we bought a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle and we turn all the pieces upside down. I said, why would you do that? She said, it's 10 times harder. I said, two other things. You're cheap and you hate yourself. When was the last time when you went out to hire that employee, you painted the picture on the box? Can you tell me what the successful end product looks like? That's the number one key to doing a better job of hiring, is knowing what success looks like. You know, we talk about job descriptions. Well, let me tell you, job descriptions are government documents in most cases. They are written by the HR department to meet government qualifications about you must be able to lift, bend, reach, stoop, but they're written for government regulation. They're not a true picture on the box. So again, let me give you what everything I try and do is I call it uncommon common sense. Okay, let's look at what you need a picture on the box. Let's change, this is not for government issue, but let's change the picture. You have hired a new employee. I don't care what the job is. I don't care if it's a fast food clerk. I don't care if it's a new HR executive. I don't care if it's a new sales manager, salesperson. I don't care what the job is, a new vice president of operation, a new CEO. You have hired this person. It is a year down the road and they have hit a home run. They have more than met, they exceeded expectation. So what I need you to do is I need you to write that letter of recognition telling me what that person did and how they did it to hit that home run. When you write that letter of recognition, you're nominating him for the Employee of the Year award, you have now given me a true picture of what success in that job looks like. And it has nothing to do with the fact they had a college degree. It had nothing to do with 90% of the things that are on that job description, but it says this is what they did and this is how they did it. Because we hire for the wrong thing. Most of us hire for skill. We hire people for what they know. We fire them for who they are. So what I could do again is we could expand this into an entire webinar, or or whatever we want to call the podcast. We could expand this in just looking at that. But that, again, we talked about your unique employment proposition to win. Secondly, you need a unique job description to win the battle. What did the person do? How did they do it? And if you build that, we'll begin to find that you're not talking about skill. In fact, as an exercise, if I had you and I said to you, okay, think about the best employee you have working for you and give me one word that describes them. 99% I would never get a skill word. I'd get a word like dependable, reliable, conscientious, team player, does whatever he has to do, does whatever she needs to do, works well with others. I will tell you, 90% of what I get is attitudes and beliefs. They have a positive work attitude. They hold themselves accountable. They take responsibility. So we need to know what we're looking for to go out and interview. That's the number one mistake when it happens, interviewing. Once you do that, we can build simple questions. Literally, great interviewing is not difficult. It really isn't if you have the right questions and know how to answer them, but more importantly, not how to ask them, but what does a great answer look like? Let me just give you one example. This is my number one, Rick, and I'm not even going to ask you to role play, but I could. It'd be a great role play. Most people, somewhere in the first part of the interview, and I could talk about that mistake too, but most people in the first part of the interview start the interview and say, Rick, would you tell me a little bit about what you've been doing? Tell me a little bit about your last job. That's the standard question. It's the wrong question. Everybody's got a canned answer for what they're now doing. Everybody's got a canned answer for their last job. Let's reverse the question and say, tell me about the very first thing you ever did to earn money. And I said I wouldn't, but I'm going to. Rick, literally, what was the very first thing you ever did to earn money?
Yeah, and the question is your first paying job. That's number one on my list, by the way, and I'm sure I learned it from you some years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what was your very first?
My very first job would have been on working on the line, packaging shirts. I was about 8 years old.
How old?
But I grew up in a family business, so.
That's okay. But what was the first thing you? So it was working on the line, folding shirts. What? Okay.
Right,
How old were
right.
you?
Boxing shirts.
How old were you?
8 years old.
8? Are you serious? Child
Very
labor.
Well, it was called summer camp. And I
What
loved
were the most important? Here's you are, 8 or 9 years old. What were the most important things you learned at that 8 or 9 year old young kid doing that?
Teamwork, because it was a line. There were multiple people. There was a conveyor belt. Things are moving. You had to have teamwork, keep the line moving, keep everything organized, keep the orders together. You learned about that. Yeah, I learned a lot about people's personalities because the people on the line were talking all the time to each other, whether it was about personal things or the weather or, the orders. They just had a way of doing it. So I learned about efficiency, how you do certain things a certain way. It's better, it's more efficient. So always had a problem with that tape machine. In those days, tape wasn't self-adhesive. You had to run it through a machine that put water on it. And I always had it all wound up because you tape the boxes, right? So a lot of little things like that. But mainly I learned about people and their personalities and the differences, and learned about good people and some people maybe that weren't so good.
I probably learned more, or the people listening to this probably learned more about you in the last 3 minutes than most people ever learn in an interview. Nobody lies to the question about the first job. What was your first job? Oh, I can remember. What'd you learn? I hated it. What was my first job? You talk about this. I always remember one guy in a session. I said, what was your first job? And his first job, he was a little older than you. He was 13. He got a job working in a Chinese restaurant, and he wasn't Chinese. And he said, okay, what was your job? He says, washing dishes.
Oh,
okay. I said, what did you learn? He said, the number one thing I learned, and I'll never forget his answer. He said, wet rice is heavy. And I laughed, and he had a sense of humor. But I said, what did you learn? He said, what do you learn? I said, you learn to show up. You learn to do what you're told to do, and you do it the first time. Because if you don't show up and you don't do it, you don't have a job, and I needed a job. I said, why'd you need a job? You're 13 years old. And I'll never forget the answer. He said, my dad had died and there was no insurance. I had a younger brother and a younger sister, and I had to help my mom pay the bills. You know what? Sometimes you do whatever you have to do because it has to be done. And that's why I did it. And how long were you there? He said, I was there. I worked every weekend and every night after school. I was there until I was 16 years old. And I'll love the answer, until I could get a real job. You want to hire him? I'd hire him any day of the week. And the fact of the matter is, I was doing this workshop for a chain restaurant group. He was 26 years old. He had put himself through college. He was not a restaurant manager at 26. He was an area manager with 9 restaurants underneath him. He did whatever he had to do to get the job done. So we could spend this whole time talking about the interviewing question, but that's just one of the keys.
Well, and the way I use personally, and not as well as extensive as that, is I always have a job requirements to go with my job description, and the requirements being the kind of person, the attitude, their ability, and it always throws people though for a loop when I ask them to develop that. for the, for an open position. Because like you say, it's always about job description. How many can you do this, or have you done that, or you moved this, or and trying to talk about the kind of person they're looking for that they need that can be most successful. It throws people off. Well, we're running out of time, but I've got to ask you this. Another thing that's a phenomena that's happening right now that I think folks would be interested in, and is this ghosting, as it's become known, where you hire someone, they agree, Monday comes around 8 o'clock and they don't show up, they don't call you. Most recently, I was talking to a well-known tax lawyer here in the greater Houston area, and they had an attorney they hired that did this, which is amazing because everybody knows everybody. Ghosting in some industries is 25, 30% of the hires now. What do we do as an employer to try to avoid hiring people that are going to ghost us?
Okay. Rick, again, will you give me 3 minutes for an hour and a half discussion? Let's just go back to the first early ghosting. You hired them. They come to, well, there's one, do they show up for the, ghost, do they show up for the interview? That's part of ghosting, okay?
Right.
You hired them. They come to work. They don't show up the next day. Ghosting. Why? Okay. Everything I talk about is what I call uncommon common sense. Okay, nothing I'm telling you hopefully is common sense, but it's amazing how many people don't do what we talk about. But let's look at just one key. You have hired this new employee. It's his first day on the job. At the end of that day, or even during that day, he's going to talk to a number of different people, his friends, his partners, etc. At the end of the day, everybody's going to ask him one question. What is the question going to be? What are you going to ask? Your son took a new job. Your girlfriend took you talked to her. What's the question you're going to ask that person?
How they enjoyed their day, how they did.
How do you like it?
Right.
Okay, if that's the question, on the very first day, what does the answer need to be?
Well, that could vary.
It needs to be fabulous, terrific, unbelievable. I can't believe I was so lucky to get this job. Okay. How many of you make the first day the best day any new employee ever had? That's the question.
That's interesting.
Okay. If you want to, you know what? We know what the question is going to be. And we could spend this, again, we could spend 3 hours just talking about how you make the first day the best day. I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about the last 15 minutes. You hire a new employee, Rick, it's the end of the first, at some point in time early in the day, in orientation, I say, Rick, look, Rick, before you go home as your manager, before you go home today, if I don't come see you 15 minutes before you leave, you come see me because I want to know how the day went. That will cut ghosting to almost zero.
Interesting.
Somehow
Very interesting.
That will cut ghosting literally to almost zero. You would never let a customer walk out frustrated. But you know what? You didn't get that computer setup, didn't work that you set him up. You didn't have his computer set up correctly. Something else happened. You promised he was going to get some training. He didn't get the training. She didn't get the training. I can tell you horror stories after horror stories, not only at hourly, but professional. You know what? They got other options. You know, why would this, you know what, you can, if you know they're frustrated, you can say, Rick, I understand the challenges today. Let's work through these. Give me a couple of days. This will get, you remember, okay, let me go back to one quick one. Remember that day on the line, folding shirts? Okay. You were probably pretty frustrated at the end of the day because you couldn't get those friggin' labels to stick on. What would have happened if whoever you were working for that day said, hey, Rick, I understand the problem. And until it's going to take you about a week. But once you master this, it is going to be so easy. Just give it the week. Okay? Will you give it the week, Rick? Are you committed to giving me that week? Did I get a commitment?
And then you've got a commitment from them.
That's
It has become really frustrating, Mel, as you can imagine, in dealing with people, and particularly the ones that don't even show up the first day. People, which to me says you've hired the wrong person if they don't show up the first day or contact you. I mean, just disappear. I mean,
Well,
made that offer to someone you shouldn't have made an offer to.
but I can show you how to, I can show you how, that may have been a great employee, but maybe you didn't make the offer the right way.
Yeah. Let's
know
save
what?
that for another time, because I'd love to have
Okay.
you back. We've run out of time today, but like you say, many of these topics are worthy of digging into and talking to more and in depth. And I think we've just touched on several that I feel that our audience will find great benefit in what we've shared today. And hopefully you'll agree to come back in the future. If someone wants to reach out and contact you, has a question about what they heard today, or talk about what you might be able to do to help their company, what's the best way for them to do it?
Okay, best way is you can go to my website, humetrics.com. I don't know if there's an email, if you've got an email or contact information on, or we can put it on here. They can email me. They can pick up the phone and call me. Email is mkleinman, KLEIMAN @Humetrics, HUMETRICS, humanmeasurement.com. You can call me, numbers on the website. I will be glad to help anybody I personally can. If you can't tell, I think I'm passionate about this.
Absolutely. And you absolutely understand it better, again, than anyone I've ever come across in my life. So Mel, thanks so much for taking time to join us.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share my message.
And we look forward to having you again later in the year, hopefully, to talk about some of the other topics out there.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
1bestconsult.com, a community of small business owners where you as an owner can find answers to the most pressing business questions you have. Not sure who to turn to when you have a challenge in your business? Turn to the folks at 1bestconsult.com. That's the number 1 bestconsult.com, where you can always find advice you can use based on common sense business experience. Join our community of like-minded business owners at 1bestconsult.com.